Matthew is going to lead us first in a prayer and then in a meditation, and then he has prepared some wisdom for us.
I'm not really prepared. I just I just thought about saying a few words and then uh we'll open the meeting up to discussion and questions. And also it's not really a I think it's actually makes a wonderful prayer, and I've always thought of it this way, but I recently read this book called Spectrum of Ecstasy. And I highly recommend this book if you're interested. It's uh, really from the perspective of Tibetan Buddhism, and it examines the emotions as the spiritual path. But in there, they had these three terrible oaths, and I've thought about this first one. I must have heard it somewhere before and thought that it makes a great prayer. Um, But here there's three of them, and they are as follows. So, whatever happens, may it happen. Whichever way things go, may it go that way. And there is no purpose. So, with these words, if you reflect on them, if you consider them deeply, especially in the context of the present moment and there being no other alternative moment, in other words, things are the way they are at every given moment, then this prayer is a prayer of complete acceptance of the present moment. Um, and with that, let's do a meditation. So sit upright with good posture. Inhale and exhale through your nose. And just begin to scan the body, starting with the head and moving slowly down through your body, looking for any signs of tension, pain, discomfort, or unbalance. Anything that seems to stick out. Whenever you find a spot of tension, on the inhale, breathe into the tension. And on the exhale, relax. That's tension. Breathe into any tension. And on the exhale, relax that spot. If you've gone all the way down through your body, start again at the top of the head and just go one more time down through the body, looking for any more subtle signs of tension. Inhale into the tension and exhale, relax. Now consider your mind and any lingering stress from the day, any worries or troubling emotions, any thoughts about the past, the future, about things going on in the world. And on the inhale, breathe into those mental and emotional tensions. And on the exhale, just let go of them. The inhale, breathe into any negative thoughts, troubling emotions. And on the exhale, let go of them. Good. Now breathe freely and focus your awareness on the breath. There's no need to count. Just follow each inhale and exhale. And with each inhale and exhale, allow the body to become more and more relaxed. And allow the mind to become more and more spacious, not grasping onto anything. If you grasp on to any thought, sensation, emotion, just note what it is. For example, that's just a thought, or that's just a sensation, and so on. And gently bring the awareness back to your breath. Now allow the breathing to take care of itself and turn your attention to the relaxed spaciousness and to the various thoughts that arise, move, and subside within it. Just observe this space of the mind and see what's going on there. Note whatever thoughts arise and see how they appear and disappear. When one thought disappears and before the next thought arises, there is a kind of gap, however seemingly small. Try to see and rest in this gap, however briefly. Be patient. There's no reason to rush thoughts away, and there's no reason to be dismayed when the next thought arises. Whatever thoughts arise are only thoughts. Whatever thoughts don't arise are no problem. So just let everything be as it is. At this point, stop trying to do anything at all. Look for any subtle effort put forth to control your attention and just let that fall away. As we conclude the meditation, don't rush. Just take your time and take note of how you feel. If you feel relaxed, at ease, or at peace, remember how you got there and try to carry this feeling forward into the evening and into your everyday life. Hmm. So I I sent you guys a few articles. Maybe you read them, maybe you didn't. It's okay. Either way, doesn't make a difference. But this question's come up a couple times recently about um, just worldly events and troubling times. There's a lot of things going on around the whole world, really, um, that people could be disturbed by or troubled by or fearful of. And so the topic tonight is really, you know, how to see um, perceived problems or perceived troubles from a spiritual perspective or from the perspective of the spiritual path. And when I considered this, I thought about writing something about it. But then I realized that this question had come up before, and I had written something about it. And that was at the beginning of the pandemic, really almost before anybody really knew what was going on. But I had written I had written those articles at that time in relation to what was going on then. And I realized that what I wrote then was just as applicable for the present moment, and really just as applicable for any moment in which one might perceive uh, troubling events in the world or be disturbed by the course of the present moment or the course of history, imagined history. And so I just want to make a few points. I read through those articles today myself and thought, well, what are the main points here? And I think all three articles kind of make a similar point, or they're kind of variations on a theme. And the first point, I think, is that all times are the same time, which is sort of demonstrated by the fact that this thing I wrote 5 years ago is just as applicable now as it would be for any other time. And so, of course, the present moment is different than other times, like different particular things are happening. But from a very basic level of our experience of the present moment, there are always troubles going on somewhere at any given moment. If you look throughout your past, there's always some kind of trouble happening somewhere. One could argue about the scale of it or the direction of it, but from the most basic perspective, that's not important because those things are relative, right? Like, for example, um, there was a tsunami warning earlier today, right? And I thought, why am I getting a tsunami warning? I'm not, I'm not near the coast. I'm not near the coast, so not very troubling for me. But if I was on the beach, it's much more serious, much more a much more troubling event. If you're on the beach and you get a tsunami warning, you should probably act immediately. So, so the relative troubles can vary. The point I really want to make is that there's always trouble somewhere. If you look for it, you will find things to be troubled about. And the other thing that's going on is that there's always the opportunity to realize our innate happiness our innate peace here and now, regardless of whatever perceived troubles are present. And that never changes. Again, you could say, oh, it's maybe easier to find happiness and peace when there are no perceived troubles present. But nevertheless, it is possible to find peace even in the most troubling situations that you could possibly imagine. And I mean that literally, you know. Um, on your deathbed, for example, you could find complete and total peace. In a violent situation, you could, in the moment, suddenly realize your innate peace. It's possible. And so the the point of saying that is that from the spiritual perspective, the the sort of the direction of our practice and the task at hand is no different now than it has been at any other time. The task is always the same, and that is to one, find peace, uh, and not, and I'll say a certain kind of peace, a peace which isn't conditional. It's not dependent upon circumstances. You know, if we only say we can only be happy if things are the way I want them to be, then this will never be a lasting peace because you'll always be disappointed. You know, you'll want something to be one way and it will turn out a different way, and this will bring about uh, unhappiness because the happiness that you're looking for is conditioned or dependent upon certain circumstances. So if we can find, so one, to find peace, and two, to see beyond the real to the I'm sorry, see beyond the unreal to the real. In other words, to discriminate what is real and what is unreal. And to see beyond the transitory, in other words, the ever-changing nature of phenomena in the world, to what is always present. And these two things go hand in hand, looking for what is always present, and what you, my experience anyway, is what you will find is peace or unconditional happiness, a happiness not based on your own egoic preferences, but a happiness based on reality itself or being itself, just a joy in your own, in the present moment. And interestingly, I noticed today that these are essentially the same as the instructions for, like, the most basic instructions for meditation, which is to calm yourself down, find some measure of peace, and then to inquire into the nature of things. What is unreal? What is real? What is transient? What is impermanent and what is permanent? And to seek the truth that way. And I'll say, you know, preemptively, from the perspective of our everyday lives, this doesn't mean that we don't do what we have to do or perform actions that we feel are necessary or compassionate or act in any way that we deem necessary in the context of our lives. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we're not going to go through some things either. Even unpleasant things, whatever the troubling situation happens to be. You know, if you have an illness, for like, let's say you have a chronic illness that isn't going away or something like that, well, you're still going to go through some unpleasant things, some things that your ego might prefer not to go through, of course. But that doesn't mean that you still can't seek this fundamental happiness, this fundamental peace. So, you know, do whatever you have to do, but try to do it while try to do it with this peace in mind or with peace in your heart, Um, and if you can't do it while seeking peace or with peace in your heart, then ask yourself whether it's worth doing. you know. So that's that's really the gist of what I wanted to say. And that this peace that is possible for everyone, um, whether you call it inner peace, innate happiness, um, joy, truth, the truth, just resting and abiding in the truth in your own nature. Um, that peace is far greater than any particular outcome. And so with regard to a spiritual practice or the spiritual path, it's a matter of prioritizing one's spiritual life or that search for peace and truth and happiness over the kind of transient kaleidoscopic turning of world events. And I would say if you can do that, even in some measure, you will be a, a calmer, happier person, and a person more, you'll have more bandwidth. You'll be a person more capable of performing whatever action you have to perform, or a person ready to respond to the calls of compassion and so on. So.
Are you ready for questions, Matthew?
Yeah, if there are some, or
Well,
comments,
I'll start off.
or complaints.
Yeah, you're so silly, Matthew. Um, so um, there are I think different kinds of things in our dual world that grab at us. And I think of one like someone who's really invested in the Ducks winning the football game. Um, they're going to be very upset if they lose. So that's one type of disruption, although it's really not really very significant in a life. The other kind of disruption is something that really knocks your daily existence a bit askew, if you get where I'm going. That some things really are disruptive and some and what you're sort of saying is that with either of those, you face it and you deal with it and you feel it, and it doesn't knock you, what is it, helter skelter or off kilter or something.
Yeah, you know, um, actually, I'll share this with you guys because, as I said, I just read this book that was all about how we respond to spaciousness or nothing, uh, and many times we've talked in the past about how people who get close to perceiving nothing sometimes have these reactions like fear, for example, you know. And in this book, it's like I said, it's like kind of a system of looking at afflicted emotions in Tibetan Buddhism, and when we're confronted with this kind of spaciousness, or we could say just uncertainty, you know, uncertainty of what's happening, what is going to happen, and also what is even happening. Um, and we have all of these reactions against it, and depending on our past and our personality, we may react with fear, we may react with trying to um, fortify ourselves or to secure what we have in some way, because everything in that moment feels threatened. The future that we imagine maybe feels threatened. Maybe our lives feel threatened. Maybe our livelihood feels threatened. Um, our ideas could feel threatened. Our beliefs could feel threatened. Like there's all kinds of different things that if something comes down the the pike are can be very destabilizing, you know. I to me, I think about a couple of years ago, my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And although I kind of knew this was coming because she had, memory problems for a number of years before that, to hear on the phone the diagnosis was like, yes, this is definitely what's happening. Um, it's kind of I'm sure everybody's had this moment where you realize, oh, now it's really like this is really happening. Like, if you don't see something like that coming, it hits like a ton of bricks, right? You feel like, okay, wow. And so in that moment, that's like a moment of you perceive the spaciousness of everything. We have a kind of fixed view of how we think things are going to go or how we think things are going to play out, and day by day we keep this kind of projection of the future and projection of the past. It's like our comfort zone. And when something comes in and breaks that up and says and throws you a curveball, actually forget about everything that you planned. Everything is up in the air now. And yeah, we can react negatively towards that, or we can, you know, inhale into those negative emotions and let them go and accept um, things the way they are. Like I said at the beginning, that those three terrible oaths, I think, are a wonderful prayer. You know, whatever happens, let it happen. The thing is, it's already happening. Like whatever is going on now is what's happening right now. So in all the possible alternatives to the present moment, which is zero, this is both the most wonderful moment and the most terrible moment. So, you can choose which kind of moment you want to live in. I don't know if that exactly addresses the question, but um, yeah, and this is true whether whether you think the disruption is small or whether you think it is a world-changing disruption. This principle is the same. And and if we're and if we're realistic, like I said, all these disruptions are relative anyway. What to somebody is a minor or not a big disruption, to somebody else might be world changing. Larry, yeah.
Larry.
So I have a follow-up question on that, Matthew. So this when you got your mom's diagnosis of Alzheimer's, um, two questions. Was it before your awakening or after?
After.
So did those negative emotions still come to you?
No, but I felt I did feel like that spaciousness of uncertainty comes into focus for sure. So I did feel that, and I felt like kind of I would say the weight of the moment. Um, and I took a long pause, you know, to kind of just take it in. But I didn't feel it was more just a moment of acknowledging and accepting uh, that moment. Like I said, also, I kind of knew it was coming, but the hearing the official diagnosis and then, you kind of recalibrate like where things stand. Um, and also you of course, the mind starts to project, okay, what's going to happen now? Like now that we have this new piece of information. Um, but no, I didn't feel it as particularly terrible, just weighty. And that weightiness of the the change in one's projected view of the future just opens up um, to the true spaciousness or uncertainty of our experience. In other words, we have no idea what's going to happen, and we have no idea what's happening right now.
If I may, when you say weightedness of the issue or the weight of it, go deeper into that. What does that mean?
I'm trying to sort of relive the moment. So it's just it's a big thought that involves the death of your mother. And so that's a big, weighty thought in the scope of a person's life. And so that I think is what lends it weight into, every thought is arises in the context of, your whole life and history and memories and all of these things. And in that context, that kind of thought that encompasses the the death of your mother is a big thought, and that thought has at least my experience of it has a big and of course I'm saying metaphorically a weight to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Were there feelings to it also, like sadness? I think of the weight of sadness.
Bruce, it was sadness, but also, within that kind of sadness is also the love and the joy of
Right.
of your um of that person in your life. So it wasn't um it wasn't negative. That sadness was balanced with yeah,
Mm,
love and joy.
mm,
Um and I will add acceptance, just accepting that everyone dies, uh, even your mother, even you. And so accepting that moment allows that love and joy to be present in that moment instead of fighting against it.
I was trying to raise my hand. Can I add
Yeah,
something?
yeah,
Yeah.
please.
So I appreciate the conversation. Personally, I I stopped looking for happiness a long time ago. I really did, and I know that for me, inner peace is kind of the platform of consistent happiness. But I can resonate more, Matthew, with what you're saying about just finding equanimity and that comes out of acceptance. And I can be at peace and be sad because
Yeah,
sad is the truth of the moment. Um, I, 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 there's no reason. I personally don't find any. I haven't found any reason to be happy all the time. But I'm definitely growing my inner peace, which feels like I'm living in the truth, which is where I want to be. Um, so, so I, and acceptance of what is absolutely essential for consistent inner peace. Um, resistance to what is just kind of creates an inner hell. It creates a suffering. And it's really
Absolutely.
easy. It's easier when things are going well, no
Of
doubt.
course.
And I really appreciate how you said you paused when you got the information because I get that. I mean, I get caught. I'm getting, I'm growing my capacity to not lose myself, lose my inner peace
Hmm.
when things aren't the way I want them to be. So I just want to add that.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, happiness comes naturally a lot, but I'm not looking for that. That's not a word that really I'm after. I'm after
Yeah.
the
And, David, I'd say, the, you're really saying the same thing I'm saying because the difference is just in the words. Because, first of all, if you stop seeking happiness, generally, I would say you've probably found it. And because, uh, you know, by seeking happiness, we define ourselves as unhappy. Think about it, right? If we're looking for happiness, we must be unhappy. Um, but the other thing is that when I talk about happiness, there's kind of two different kinds of happiness. There's relative happiness, which is kind of the happiness that most people think about in terms of like, I'm happy because everything's going well in my life and nothing's wrong or it's relative or happiness that's dependent on circumstances. But when I'm talking about a deeper happiness or fundamental happiness, what I'm really talking about is exactly what you're talking about, which is peace of mind. Um, and I think that peace is, um, for me anyway, it's fundamentally there's a kind of there's a kind of happiness that's when you have that peace, there's a kind of happiness that is there even when you're sad, like you said, you know.
Yeah, you just kind of accept the way of things, and it's really hard, but to reduce, I'm really working on reducing my expectations of almost everything. Although I definitely want to hold on to some expectations because
Yeah.
it feels kind of right, but
Yeah, I mean,
expectations are a trap.
the thing is like there's no problem with like um making a projection in the future or planning for the future. You almost have to engage in some kind of expectations to do planning and things like that because you're weighing probabilities of what's going to happen, right?
Mm,
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that as long as we know that's what we're doing
mm,
because and know that even though we are have a certain expectation or we think, oh, this might happen, we know that that's only a thought
that's good.
and that what really happens is going to be what really happens even if it doesn't match that expectation or prediction, and that reality is way more important and real than the unreal thoughts and expectations.
Oh, thank you. That's a really nice piece. Thank you for that.
Barry, you had your hand up.
Yeah, hi. When I read your essays and listened to you, Matthew, I thought of the Sanskrit Satchitananda that I've heard described as the truth is consciousness is bliss. And I wondered if it has any relation to what you're talking about.
Well, I would say, first of all, I'll just say right off the bat, of course it does. Now let's think about it for a second. Yeah, of course it does, because Sat Chitananda is a description of Brahman or the supreme reality. And Brahman is described as being one without second. In other words, that's all there is. Everything is Brahman. Everything is being, consciousness, bliss. And so, of course, it relates to this. And and I would say, that spaciousness, which could be perceived as uncertainty or fear, uh, or, troubled times is actually that spaciousness is it is this Brahman, the direct perception of it. And normally we react to it by trying to cover it up in some way, with we readjust our model of the world, we readjust our predictions of past and future, we recreate the world in a new view in order to say, okay, now this is the way things are. But when our view of how things are is completely destabilized or wiped away, that is in that moment, just like in the meditation between the end of one thought and before the next thought arises, there is this gap, this spaciousness. And in that spaciousness, I think it is possible to recognize this fundamental reality as the background of everything. In other words, what everything really is. And I think these three qualities are indicative because, being is just existence, and consciousness is our way of understanding experience, that we are here experiencing something. And the bliss component is really what we're talking about. That behind everything, even the most terrible things, the reality behind everything is bliss or love. You could call this love as well. And so, that's essentially the message that I'm trying to convey here, is that from the spiritual perspective, in troubling times, one should look even harder for this underlying reality that is blissful in nature, or you could say good in an all-encompassing sense. I'm always reminded in that sense of Ramana Maharshi. Somebody once, I think a Westerner was there, and he wasn't so interested in self-realization or coming to know this supreme reality himself. He just wanted to know if it was good. So that was his question. He said, "Is it good?" And Ramana said, "Yes, it's good."
Thank you.
Anybody else got some questions? Alan.
Hello, Bruce.
Hi,
Hello,
Alan.
everyone. Questions. To me, no, I don't have any questions. If I had any turbulence, I would have questions.
Oh, good answer.
I don't have, but I do have a comment. When I read your works, Matthew, to me, they were just, the absolute perfect writings of someone who was enlightened. They were great. The word I loved that stood out the most to me was phantasmagorical.
Now, as a writer, I can appreciate that. Yeah, it's a great word.
That is a great word. That is a great word. And
I'm also really fond of kaleidoscopic. What a wonderful word that is.
You mentioned that in your
Yeah,
talk just
exactly.
today. Well, this is way off topic, but one of the games I play with my kids, who are now adults, is Hangman,
Hmm.
and I'm going to use that word
That's great.
in that way.
Phantasmagorical.
Phantasmagorical. Yeah. So I don't have any questions, but I've got great appreciation.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you. Yeah, yeah, I could say a few words about those words, particularly both his words are kind of describing the same thing, which is like uh a whirlwind of color and sensation and experience. And that's what we're experiencing. It's constantly changing. It's nothing is stable. Like in meditation, if you watch your mind, it's constant change, constant things are happening. You can never fix it. You can never stop um the mind. It's just constantly going. And the finer you look, the more you see, like even on the microscopic level. I was at the retreat that I went to. I remember we were doing this meditation about um, desire, aversion, and confusion or indifference. You know, and if you when you're meditating, if you start to look at desire, confusion, and indifference, like on a gross level, a big level, it will manifest as thoughts, right? Like, oh, I want to get up. I'd like the bell to ring now so this meditation will be over, or you might think, oh, like I feel a sense of something just beyond my conscious understanding, and I want to get that. And then you might just become sluggish and just forget about it. I'm just going to wait until the end of this. So those are just thoughts. But if you look even closer beyond the thoughts, you will see that even like within the only way I can describe this is kind of maybe metaphorical, but imagine if you could feel like the cellular structure of your body. And within that are all like at a microscopic level, there are these little uh, desires, even just like twitches of the hand or indications of wanting something or having an aversion to something, like just when you feel something in your back, right away, there's at a very tiny level, you're already judging, is that good or bad? Do I want that or do I not want that? And that's happening all over within your experience, all throughout your mind, all throughout your body, in billions of different places, all at once. And if that's not a phantasmagoria, I don't know what is. So there's all of this is happening at once, and nothing can be stopped. Nothing can be fixed in place, and uh, you can't hold on to anything. And so that's kind of what's going on in our experience. And you could say it's a phantasmagoria. You could say, I also like this word kaleidoscopic, as like, when you look through a kaleidoscope and you turn it, there's just this twirling, changing, ever-changing, swirling whirlwind of colors and shapes and things like that. And the reason I like the kaleidoscopic metaphor is because what makes the images in the kaleidoscope appear? Beyond the tube is light. And metaphorically, that light is that bliss of the supreme reality. That is the truth behind everything, that makes all the shapes appear, that makes all the colors appear, that makes the phantasmagoria of our minds and bodies and our world appear and change continuously.
There's that was great. There is so much energy in that word, that phantasmagoria, and in your description, and in what's going on in the moment right now. Um, yeah, I mean, I have a very felt experience of being engulfed in and being a part of the supreme being, as you're saying. Thank you.
That's great. Let's all enjoy it.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bruce.
Yeah. I love your thoughts there, and rest in bliss, my friend.
Join me.
Drag me into it.
Kicking
Clara,
in.
you pop back onto the screen. Does that mean you have a question?
No, Bruce, I just left for a second, and I'm just back.
Okay,
No
I missed
questions.
you.
No question, just a comment. And if you ask me, I was thinking earlier when we were talking about world events and all the things that are happening. It's a very simple thought that's been on my mind lately about all the distress around things happening here in this country and outside this country and everywhere. I'm thinking that maybe the only way to be really kind these times is to actually, as much as possible, keep the peace of mind. And that I'm seeing as an act of kindness to not go nuts like what I see a lot around me. So just that simple thought.
Yeah, I think that's very true. You know, if you're not calm, I should say, just say this, the more calm you are, the more peace of mind you have, the more open you are to noticing the needs of others, the pain of others, the confusion of others. And the more you will be able to, like you said, be of help, you know, to help the situation rather than heap trouble onto trouble, you know, by
But
adding, you know, craziness onto craziness.
yeah, and I think just even if just the act of being at peace is kind, because not only because you are more attuned to other people's needs and because you are contributing to the environment. I think mental states are contagious to a certain
Oh,
degree.
yeah, they absolutely are. That's, yeah, 100% true. What my teacher used to say, you know, in the context of martial arts, um, like fear is very contagious. If you're fearful in a, like if you're in a stressful situation and with a group of people and one person starts to get afraid, that fear is contagious. And in the same vein, if you can remain calm in a stressful situation, that calm and stability is contagious. And so it's absolutely true. You know, we're not islands unto ourselves. We're connected to everyone. And so how we approach the world in our lives affects how other people experience the world. You know, we've all had the experience of standing next to somebody who was maybe very calm and supportive, loving, and feeling that peace and feeling at ease because of it, you know? Yeah. I'll tell you another story because it relates to the idea that the calmer you are, the more at peace you are, the more you see what's going on. the more you notice, because you're not all in your own troubles, in your own negative thoughts and emotions and so on. So at the retreat, I was sitting for, we did a lot of sitting, sitting, meditating, and I was sitting down on the floor, just looking out over this big carpet, like a patterned carpet. Those who were there know the carpet was mentioned because we all spent a lot of time staring at it. So I was sitting there very, very calmly, and I noticed something moving on the carpet. And I looked at it, and I couldn't exactly tell what it was, if it was a bug or a spider or something like that. But I saw it, and really kind of spontaneously, without thinking, I reached under my meditation cushion and grabbed this card that I had. We had these cards of precepts. So I had this card with stuff written on it. I grabbed this card, and I just put it down in front of this thing that I saw moving, and the thing stopped, And then I was just watching it. And then it was so still, I started to wonder if it was really there, or if I had been hallucinating something. So I'm just staring. I was sort of like leaning forward and just staring at this spot on the ground, trying to see, is that really something, or is it just part of the carpet pattern? It was sort of perfectly camouflaged into the carpet. And I just sat there, maybe for a minute, 2 minutes, just waiting to see what was going to happen. And then all of a sudden it started to move again, and it crawled right onto the card. And then again, without really thinking about it or with any hesitation, I just leaned over, picked up the card, got up, and I walked outside and let this bug out into the bushes, and came back in. But the thing is, I never would have seen that bug had I not been just in this very calm and peaceful state. And that's happened to me before as well. I remember one time I was in a restaurant having a conversation with somebody, and in mid-sentence, I said, "Just a minute." And I reached over, and the person next to me had a really big bug on them. It was like it was on their shoulder. And I was like, "Excuse me." And I grabbed this bug off them, and I took it outside. And I don't know, even that one was even more mysterious because I don't even know how I noticed. And anyway, yeah, when you're quiet inside, you notice more outside. Everyone's had this experience, I'm sure.
Other people with questions.
I have a question. Thank you all, and happy December. And yeah, I love the Sat Chidananda. And my couple questions are: this is the concrete stuff is helpful, and that last example with the insects. But let's say something happens tomorrow. You get a letter in the mail that says, and this is mundane and not a major thing, but let's say you owe money to the bank for some fee or something. I'm trying to think of a scenario that
Sure.
you didn't expect. It comes, and then my mind, let's say it happens to me, my mind says, oh, did I make a mistake? Did I forget something? You kind of go through all these gyrations, and obviously you have to take some action, but how do you kind of get back to the calm when it's
Okay.
a hassle? And then my other question,
Yeah.
maybe it ties in with that, is gratitude, how to use that in the process of finding
Great.
that.
Yeah, thank you. Everyone's so calm with it. Nobody had any problems. This is a great question. Because at the end of the day, one of the great things about spiritual practice, and I think anyway, any practice that we take up or training that we take up should be immediately helpful. right? Even first date, we should be we should be able to apply something, even if it's small, that could be helpful. And so sometimes if it's important to just look at, what about practical examples? And so, if when something like that comes up, either from the outside, like you said, the bank calls you, or you get a letter from the IRS or something, and suddenly you have all your life has been kind of disrupted by this, not just by the thing that happened outside, but suddenly you have all these doubts and questions about yourself. Did I mess up? Is it my fault? Or judgment about yourself. Oh, I can never keep track of these things. It's hopeless or whatever. And then you're worried about what's going to happen. How am I going to set this right? And in my own experience, I often have this experience socially. If I feel like I've said something that maybe offended somebody, and then I later I think, oh, I said the wrong thing, and then I feel like I don't know, just upset about it or something like that. And so, I think the most important thing is to take a moment and see that it's happening. That's the first thing, is just see that that's what's happening, that suddenly your prediction for how your day was going to go, or how your month was going to go, or whatever, is suddenly changed by this new information. And now everything is stirred up. And you just see, okay, the most important thing is to see that's happening. And that it's starting to stress you out in some way, right? Like the thoughts are starting to churn and you're starting to get tense or whatnot is. But the most important thing is to see that it's happening, and to practice seeing as early as possible when it's happening. That if you wait, then all these thoughts start building up, and then you're like, oh man, it's just a big mess, and then you're upset and everything like that. But if you see just when it's like just a thought or two, and you see like, oh, there's that negative thought that gets me spinning about this or that. There's that judgment about myself that always happens in these situations. And see that those things first, just see that they're just thoughts. Nothing has really changed. You're still just sitting there. All you did was open an envelope, And so the first thing is just see that the whole situation that you're spinning in your head is just that, a story that you're starting to spin in your head. And just having that, acknowledging that even just that can give you a little bit of perspective or space between what's happening and your peace of mind. It's just like, I see, okay, it's just those are just thoughts. And then, depending on how severe this thing is, if it comes on quickly, the other thing to do is to focus on breathing, because when we get caught up in those thoughts, sometimes if you start to get stressed or fearful about a situation, your breathing will actually be disruptive. And because you're breathing, think an extreme example of this is if you're startled. Suddenly you stop breathing. And when you stop breathing, or your breathing is inhibited or disrupted, that can also actually feed into the feelings of anxiety and or fear and stuff like that. The difference between being startled and the most relaxing, lazy day you've ever had on the beach or something, it's a huge difference in your body state too. So if you're very stressed, focus on breathing, you know, in through the nose, out through the nose, or if you're very stressed, in through the nose, out through the mouth, or if you're in pain. So sometimes it can come on from pain, you know, if you have an injury or something like that, that can throw an immediate wrench in your day. And so if you're in a lot of pain, again, the body will start to tense up. You will start to project, oh, this is going to take months to heal. You know, I don't know, you know, what if I permanently damaged my elbow or whatever? You know, all these, those are all thoughts that come along with the thing that happened. But it's like there's like a cascade of thoughts that happens in that moment. So if you can just try to center yourself in the moment by breathing, and just create some space. And when you're able to create that space, you can look at the situation and see part of it is just a situation, and part of it is this cascade of stories that's coming out of your mind. And, you know, and that alone can be extremely helpful, you know, and then you have to work with it. In other words, you have to solve the problem, whatever it is. You know, you have to address the situation, work within that situation. But it's so much easier to work within that situation if you have some peace of mind, some calm, some relaxation, and some perspective that it's just a situation that needs to be dealt with, and that a certain portion of your stress or anxiety is just created by your own thought stream. That's good. Great
Thank
question.
you. Well, thank you.
Yeah,
That was very,
great
very
question.
helpful.
And the you know, the kinds of questions when I was in my own practice in martial arts, this is exactly the kind of question that we dealt with. But you know, often it was, you know, like, let's say you get a punch in the stomach, you know, how are you going to deal with that? But the reality is opening a piece of troubling mail, or getting troubling news, or injuring yourself in some way, or making a mistake in your life and having to deal with it. These are all in different ways like a punch to the stomach. And dealing with them is very similar. Yeah. Yeah.
And what about gratitude? Does that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely. I mean, let me ask you this. Do you have a specific question about gratitude, or how does it relate to all this?
Um, yeah, I guess how it relates and how to, sometimes I see it maybe as a practice, as, you know, to think back on the day and just note, yeah, I feel like I notice more when I'm
Yeah,
more grateful,
absolutely.
and the small things. Oh, that person, you know, they helped me today. That was really, you know, they went out of their way. What, just to tune
Yeah.
in to the
Yeah,
natural
absolutely. I
flow.
think it is. I think it's a wonderful practice. And like everything, whatever you do consistently, you will get better at it. Um, so if you practice gratitude, it will just naturally, it will come more naturally to you. And because it comes more naturally to you in times where there's trouble in your life, you will have this background of gratitude. You will have this practiced awareness of uh, all that you are grateful for. And so, um, so yeah, that's a wonderful practice. And on the other hand, if you habitually practice, just let's say, just being angry about everything that goes wrong, let's say that's your practice, you will get good at it. And when troubling things happen, the first thing that will come to you is to be angry about it, because it's what you've practiced. So that's a very just practical, like I said, that's an answer on the very practical level, right? Practice what how you want to be in life, you know. And if you do that, to think about every day about everything that you're grateful for, then gratitude throughout life will come much easier to you. And I would say you will live a much more rewarding and rich life, because you'll see how wonderful everything is. You'll be noticing how wonderful everything is, instead of noticing how terrible it is.
Everything is wonderful, right, Alan? Okay, there's a few people who haven't asked questions, and we've got time for one final question. If I'm looking at Leslie and Liz and Raymond and Dennis and Carol and Christy.
Well, I'll just say, Matthew, you really articulated well why I do martial arts. Right? Um, the practice of fear, the practice of grounding yourself, of your breath, coming back to that. I always say that what happens on the mat is my best lessons in my life. And so thank you for that. It's nice to be reminded that I'm not just wrecking my dang body out there.
Well, take care of yourself. But yeah, and it's it's why it's you have to, if you're just a regular person practicing martial arts, of course it could potentially have some practical value, but hopefully it never has to have any practical value for you.
Right.
But it still has this other value as a catalyst to understand yourself more and to understand your reactions more, both to negative pressures, and how to process those in yourself, both in the moment and afterwards as well. And so, yeah, it's a laboratory for studying yourself, for sure.
Right. And helpful when you're experiencing emotional things and life things and how you're responding to that. I think my question was, I just wanted to say also that was your in one of the articles you wrote about the entire phenomenal universe is a phantasmagorical of change. I was like, boy, it's been a minute since I've had a phantasmagoria experience. I was thinking about tonight and when I was walking today and thinking about beliefs. And I think my thought was that beliefs can be really dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was wondering your input on that.
Yeah. They can be a great help and they can be a great hindrance. Everything is dependent on the situation. And so, but it is good to know that on the spiritual path, at some point, fast-held beliefs will become an impediment, that will become an obstacle, because they're just beliefs, they're just thoughts. And the spiritual path is aimed at recognition, direct recognition of the truth. And so at some point, in order to keep going, you have to let go of the belief and see what is really there. On the other hand, at some points in one's life or early on the path, for example, beliefs can be a great help. They can be a great support and a great motivator as well. For example, if we believe there is a truth to be found, this can help us on the path, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't put forth any effort, you know. So they can be helpful, and they can definitely be unhelpful, depending on many different the totality of the circumstance. Yeah. And of course, there's many layers of belief. You know, when people speak of belief, they often think about the big ones, like, do you believe in God? Or do you believe, you know, this version of God or that version of God? Or do you believe, you know, the universe was created or always existed? Or do you believe there's a purpose to life? Do you believe a person has a soul? Do you believe the person is an individual? You know, there's so many beliefs, you know, but those are big ones. There's also the belief structures go much deeper than we even imagine they go. For example, do you exist? Does the world exist? Are objects really solid? Is there anything beyond my field of perception? How could I know if there's anything beyond my field of perception when my field of perception is all I've ever known? I can't go beyond it. So we have a whole lot of beliefs that we actually take to be reality without questioning them. And the spiritual path, ultimately, again, you have to question everything, not just the big beliefs, but also the small ones, or the ones that you just took for granted as like the ground is solid, you know. The moon is there when I don't look at it. You know, we just take those things for granted, but the spiritual path asks us to actually examine these things, to investigate them, and to try to see what you can say for sure without relying on belief.
And like you were saying, things are always changing. You can't grasp it.
That's right. That's right. Every time you try to nail something down, right, solidify it as a belief. If you're really looking closely, you'll see it's quick, squidges out from under your hand every time you're trying to pin something down.
I kind of like that feeling. It abdicates me from any responsibility on having any effect on change. But
well, you know, there's a people can have different reactions to that feeling, but one feeling is, liberation is that it's the feeling of liberation that your whole life you've been trying to pin. Maybe I'm not saying you, but in general, my whole life I've been trying to pin something down. When you really realize it's impossible, nothing can be pinned down, suddenly you are liberated from that responsibility of having to figure it out. It can't be figured out, not in the way that you imagined, that you could pin it all down and explain it all logically and have a cohesive model of the universe and metaphysics that is undeniably true. When you realize that can't be done because everything is in constant change, suddenly you feel liberated from that quest. You know, you feel free. I'm free of that.
Yeah,
you know, I can relax.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. And you happen to open the door to Matthew's favorite topic. Um, but and he could go on for hours on that one.
Martial
Um,
arts?
nope, beliefs
Ah,
and views
Views,
and
yeah.
insubstantiality of those. So this was a really nice discussion. I was, I often do some little gratitude prayer or something at the end. So I'm going to try and just summarize what I pulled out of this. The first was that, we can feel our feelings deeply, our sadness, our regrets, and not be knocked askew by that. That we can remain, as David said, with equanimity, even as we feel the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, to quote Shakespeare again.
Hamlet.
Yeah. Um, and, um, that feeling of being centered, that bliss, the equanimity, the love that we all seek that, and we all know that. Um, and we really can't be knocked off that either. And then Jess's gratefulness and gratefulness for Leslie's impermanence, because without change, ooh, we would all be stuck. Uh, so, may we all be grateful and wallow in the joys of impermanence. May you all have a wonderful Hanukkah and Christmas, and may we all join this Zoom again in the new year, with, I don't know, hope and joy and centeredness.